Ma'am, lower the window for me. I need to see your driver's license and vehicle registration. I stopped you because your vehicle was drifting within the lane. Jesus! Appreciate your cooperation.
What Trooper Daniel Harlow uncovered during what should have been a routine traffic stop on a freezing January evening would permanently alter his understanding of reality. The woman he encountered behind the wheel was, according to official records, not supposed to exist. She had been pronounced dead more than 2 decades earlier, and yet there she was, calm, composed, and very much present. By the time additional units would later arrive on scene, nothing about the situation would make sense. What they would find defied protocol, logic, and everything Harlow had been trained to trust. This wasn't simply an odd encounter or a clerical error. It was something that should have been impossible, and the physical evidence tied to that night is what makes this story truly disturbing. But before we go any further, take a brief moment with us. Out of every place you could be right now, you chose to be here, and that matters more than you know. Let us know where you're watching from. Drop your city or country in the comments. And if this is your first time here, subscribe and leave a like so we can keep sharing stories that refuse to let go of your thoughts long after they end. Now back to that night. Trooper Daniel Harlow had spent nearly 12 years with the Northern State Highway Division. He had handled fatal collisions, intoxicated drivers, domestic disputes spilling onto roadways, and long nights that blurred into one another. But nothing in his career prepared him for January 17, 2026. Darkness had already swallowed the sky and the temperature was falling fast. Harlow was patrolling a quiet stretch of Interstate 61, a route notorious for late-night drivers pushing their luck to beat the cold and get home faster. Traffic was sparse. Most homes nearby were lit, dinners finished, televisions humming softly. At approximately 8:42 p.m., he noticed a charcoal gray sedan moving noticeably below the speed limit. That alone wasn't suspicious. What caught his attention was its movement. The vehicle drifted slightly toward the shoulder, corrected itself, then did it again, subtle, controlled, but persistent. It wasn't reckless, it looked tired. Harlow activated his emergency lights and pulled in behind the sedan. The vehicle didn't respond immediately. It continued forward for several seconds, nearly a full football field, before finally slowing and pulling onto the shoulder. That hesitation sent a quiet warning through him. Most drivers reacted instantly. This one behaved as if the lights hadn't registered right away. He radioed dispatch, reported the stop, relayed the license plate number, and confirmed his location. Standard procedure, nothing out of the ordinary yet. Grabbing his flashlight, Harlow exited his cruiser. The highway was eerily still, no passing cars, no wind, just the low idle of his engine and the faint static of his radio. As he approached the driver's side, the beam of his flashlight illuminated the interior. A woman sat behind the wheel. She was perfectly still, both hands rested on the steering wheel. Her gaze remained fixed straight ahead. The window was still up. Harlow tapped lightly on the glass. The woman turned her head slowly, too slowly, and looked directly at him. Her skin appeared unusually pale, but he'd seen nervous drivers before. Headlights could drain color from anyone's face. He motioned for her to lower the window. She complied. And the moment the glass slid down, something shifted. Her eyes were wide, unblinking, focused in a way that felt deliberate rather than natural. Harlow felt a tightness settle in his chest but pushed it aside. He introduced himself and calmly explained the reason for the stop, the drifting, the inconsistent lane positioning. He asked if she was feeling unwell or had consumed alcohol. She didn't respond right away. When she finally spoke, her voice was flat, empty, devoid of emotion. "I'm fine," she said, "just tired." Her hands never left the wheel. She didn't fidget, didn't shift, didn't blink. Harlow asked where she was coming from, visiting relatives, where she was headed, home. Each answer came without hesitation, short, precise, almost rehearsed. A chill crawled down his spine that had nothing to do with the cold. He followed protocol and asked for her license and registration. The woman moved, but her motions were stiff, unnaturally controlled. Like someone relearning how to move after a long time still. She retrieved the registration from the glove compartment and then a driver's license from her purse. Harlow examined the documents under his flashlight. The registration was valid. The vehicle was registered to a woman named Margaret Elmsley. Then he looked at the license photo. The woman in the photo appeared to be in her late 20s, light hair, familiar eyes. Harlow looked back at the driver. The resemblance was unmistakable, yet something about it felt profoundly wrong. He instructed her to remain in the vehicle and return to his cruiser, an unfamiliar sense of dread settling in his stomach as he prepared to run her information. Seated inside his patrol car, Trooper Daniel Harlow entered the information exactly as it appeared on the license. Margaret Ann Elmsley. Date of birth, April 11, 1978. He hit enter and waited. The system lagged longer than usual. The loading circle spun, paused, then resumed. Harlow frowned. Rural databases were slow sometimes, but this felt different. When the results finally populated, his body went rigid. There was a record, but alongside the standard identification details was a notation that made no sense. Status, deceased. Harlow stared at the screen, convinced it had to be a system error. He refreshed the page, same result. He ran the license number again manually, unchanged. According to state and federal records, Margaret Ann Elmsley had died on February 2, 2004, 22 years earlier. His pulse hammered in his ears. He leaned closer to the screen, scrolling. There were court filings, probate records, archived insurance documents. Then at the bottom of the file, a scanned death certificate. He opened it. Margaret Ann Elmsley. Born April 11, 1978. Declared deceased February 2, 2004. Cause of death, catastrophic injuries sustained in a motor vehicle collision. Location, Interstate 61. Mile marker 188, the same highway, the same stretch of road. The same place Harlow was parked right now. He slowly lifted his eyes toward the windshield. The sedan sat ahead of him, motionless. Through the rear glass, he could see the outline of the woman's head. She hadn't moved, not even slightly. Every rational explanation tried to force its way forward. Identity theft, outdated records, clerical mistake, those things happened. But none of them explained why the woman in the driver's seat matched the photo perfectly, or why someone would knowingly use the identity of a deceased person that would instantly flag during a traffic stop. Harlow's hand hovered near the radio. What was he supposed to say? Dispatch, I've pulled over a woman who died 22 years ago. He exhaled slowly and forced himself back into procedure. Whatever this was, it had to be handled carefully, methodically. He exited the cruiser, flashlight clenched tightly in his hand. As he approached the sedan again, the woman turned her head toward him before he spoke. As if she already knew he was coming back, the same blank expression, the same unblinking eyes. Ma'am, Harlow said evenly, I need you to step out of the vehicle. For a moment, she didn't respond. Then her head tilted slightly to the side, almost curiously. Without a word, she opened the door and stepped onto the shoulder. Up close, the unnatural quality of her movements became impossible to ignore. Her joints moved stiffly, like hinges that hadn't been used in years. She stood facing him, hands at her sides, waiting. Harlow swallowed and kept his voice professional. The identification you provided belongs to someone who is legally deceased, he said. I need you to explain that. The woman smiled. It wasn't warm, it wasn't human. Her lips pulled back too far, revealing teeth that looked unnaturally white under the beam of the flashlight. You're correct, she said calmly. That is my name. Harlow felt his stomach drop. You're saying this license belongs to you, he asked. Yes, she replied. It always has. His training kicked in automatically. He asked for another form of identification, any additional document that could clarify who she was. She reached into her purse again, her movements just as stiff as before. She handed him a credit card first, expired 2004, then a library card, its edges yellowed and curling slightly, issued 2001. Then an old insurance card, the print faded but still legible. Every single card bore the same name, Margaret Ann Elmsley. Harlow examined each one under his flashlight, his hands beginning to tremble despite his effort to stay composed. These weren't reproductions. They looked authentic, aged naturally, frozen in time. What's going on? He asked more firmly now. The woman's smile lingered, but something sharper crept into her voice. You weren't meant to understand, she said. Not yet. A cold sensation crawled up Harlow's neck. He stepped back and radioed dispatch, carefully choosing his words. He requested a second unit for assistance with a complicated identification issue. Dispatch acknowledged. Backup was approximately 10 minutes out. 10 minutes had never felt longer. The woman remained still beside the car, watching him. Waiting, Harlow gestured toward the sedan. Place your hands on the vehicle, he instructed. She complied. And that's when reality fractured. Her hand passed straight through the door, not slipping, not missing. It went through solid metal as if it wasn't there at all. Harlow stumbled backward, his breath catching in his throat. Do that again, he said, his voice barely steady. She turned and placed her palms on the hood. This time he heard it, the faint sound of skin touching metal. Then her hands sank into the hood slightly, as though the steel had softened beneath them before snapping back into place. Harlow's hand drifted instinctively toward his weapon. The woman's smile widened. I've been waiting, she said softly, for someone who would finally see me. Trooper Daniel Harlow took another step back, creating distance between himself and the woman standing beside the sedan. Every instinct drilled into him over a decade of service was screaming that this situation was no longer within the bounds of anything he could control. You need to stay where you are, he said firmly, forcing authority into his voice. The woman didn't move. Instead, she tilted her head slightly, studying him with those wide, unblinking eyes. I won't hurt you, she said. That's not why I'm here. Then why are you here? Harlow demanded. For the first time, her smile faded. I've been here a long time, she replied, longer than anyone realizes. The air around them felt heavier, colder. Harlow could see his breath now, thin white clouds drifting into the beam of his flashlight. The highway, moments ago merely quiet, felt abandoned, like the rest of the world had pulled away from this stretch of road. You said you were waiting, Harlow said. Waiting for what? For someone to notice, she answered. Most don't. They drive past, they're tired, distracted, late for dinner. You saw me drift, you chose to stop. Her words sent another chill through him. Harlow glanced toward the approaching curve in the road, no headlights. Backup was still minutes away. What happened to you? He asked cautiously. The woman looked past him, down the dark ribbon of asphalt stretching ahead. I was driving home from work, she said. It was late. I remember thinking how quiet the road felt. Her voice remained calm, but something distant echoed beneath it, like a memory replayed too many times. A truck crossed the median, she continued. I didn't even have time to brake. Harlow's grip tightened on the flashlight. That was here, he asked. She nodded slowly. This exact stretch, same lane, same cold. The temperature dropped again, sharply this time. Harlow's teeth began to chatter despite himself. I died before anyone reached me, she said, but I didn't leave. That's not possible, Harlow muttered. She turned back to him. And yet I'm still standing here. Her outline shimmered faintly like heat distortion rising off pavement in summer. For a moment she seemed less solid, her edges blurring. I tried to go, she said. I tried to move on. But every time something pulled me back, this place, this moment. Harlow swallowed. Why show yourself now? Her eyes finally blinked. I'm tired, she said, tired of repeating the same night. Tired of being unseen. She took a step closer. Instinctively, Harlow stepped back, his heart pounding. You don't belong here, he said. Neither do you, she replied gently. But you stopped anyway. The radio on Harlow's shoulder crackled briefly with static. He ignored it, his focus locked on her. What do you want from me? He asked. Her form flickered again, more noticeably this time. I need someone to remember, she said. Someone to acknowledge that I was real, that my life mattered. Harlow hesitated. Logic screamed at him to disengage, to wait for backup, to ground himself in procedure. But something else, something deeply human, kept him rooted in place. Who should I tell? He asked quietly. Relief washed across her face, softening it. My brother, she said. His name is Thomas. He lives in Ridgeway County. I've tried to reach him for years. Her voice weakened, as though speaking itself required effort. Tell him I don't blame anyone, she continued. Tell him I'm ready to let go. Harlow reached for his notepad with shaking hands and wrote the name and address she gave him, every letter etched into his mind. Red and blue lights appeared faintly in the distance. The woman glanced toward them, then back at Harlow. Time is short, she said. They won't see me. What happens when they get here? He asked. Her expression grew sad. I won't be able to stay. The flashing lights grew brighter with every passing second, washing the highway in pulses of red and blue. Trooper Daniel Harlow felt the moment slipping away, like sand running through his fingers. Wait, he said. There has to be more. You didn't stop me just to pass along a message. The woman looked at him for a long moment, then the cold deepened. It wasn't just the air anymore. It felt as if the temperature dropped inside his chest, pressing outward. Her appearance began to change, not suddenly but undeniably. Her skin paled further, turning an unnatural gray. Dark shadows spread beneath her eyes, sinking them deeper into her face. The calm projection he had first encountered started to fracture. This, she said quietly, is what I really am. The transformation accelerated. A deep wound opened across her forehead as if torn by invisible force. One arm twisted at an angle no human limb should hold. Her clothing darkened, stained by something old and dried. The image of a composed woman standing roadside peeled away, revealing the damage beneath. Harlow couldn't move. Training, fear, reason, none of it mattered. His legs refused to respond. She looked down at herself almost curiously, as though seeing the injuries for the first time. I don't feel it anymore, she said. The pain ended long ago. What's left? Harlow asked, his voice barely audible. Nothing, she replied. Just time without meaning. She stepped closer. This time Harlow didn't retreat. Cold poured from her like fog, sinking into his bones. It wasn't sharp, it was heavy, ancient. Most people forget, she said. They move on. They heal. Her damaged face lifted toward him. But the dead stay where they're left. The approaching patrol car slowed behind Harlow's cruiser. Doors slammed. Voices carried faintly through the night. You have to go, Harlow said. They're almost here, she nodded. This is the moment, she said. Your acknowledgement opened something, a way out. Her outline flickered violently now, parts of her turning translucent. The injuries faded in and out as if her form couldn't decide what version of itself to hold. Promise me, she said. You'll find him. I will, Harlow replied. I promise. For the first time, something like peace crossed her face. Thank you, she whispered, for stopping. Her body began to unravel, not tearing apart, but dissolving gently like smoke breaking into the wind. Piece by piece, she faded, thinning into the cold night air. Harlow shielded his eyes instinctively as a final rush of freezing air passed through him, and then she was gone. Trooper Harlow, a voice called out. He turned. 2 officers stood behind him, flashlights sweeping the area. Confusion etched across their faces. You okay? One asked. We got your call. Harlow swallowed hard and nodded. Yeah, he said. I'm fine. He looked back toward the sedan. The driver's door was closed. The seat was empty. He approached slowly and shined his flashlight inside. Dust coated the dashboard. The upholstery was cracked and brittle. The air inside smelled stale, old metal and neglect. This car hadn't been driven in years. The other officers joined him, exchanging uneasy glances. "That thing looks abandoned," one muttered. Harlow said nothing. The second patrol unit parked behind Harlow's cruiser, engines idling as the two responding officers approached the sedan with cautious curiosity. Their flashlights swept over the vehicle's exterior, revealing layers of grime baked into the paint and rust beginning to bloom along the wheel wells. "This thing hasn't moved in a long time," one of them said. "You sure you saw it driving?" Harlow nodded. "I watched it drift across the shoulder line twice." They exchanged looks. One officer ran the plates through his onboard computer. The result came back almost instantly. "Vehicle status. Totaled and salvaged," he read aloud. "Declared a total loss in early 2004 after a fatal collision." Silence followed. The second officer frowned. "That's not possible. If it was salvaged, it shouldn't even exist anymore. Definitely not sitting here." They searched the area methodically. Flashlights traced the gravel shoulder, the nearby ditch, the asphalt itself. No footprints, no disturbed ground. No sign of anyone leaving the scene. Nothing. Harlow stood apart, watching the empty driver's seat through the window. He could still picture her there, hands on the wheel, eyes fixed forward. "Dispatch, confirm registered owner," one officer said into his radio. The reply crackled back moments later. "Registered owner Margaret Ann Elmsley, status deceased." The word hit the group like a physical weight. The officers looked at Harlow. "You want to explain this?" one asked carefully. Harlow considered the question. Every instinct told him the truth would sound like madness. He chose the only explanation that would survive a report. "I initiated a stop on what appeared to be a moving vehicle," he said. "When I returned from running the plates, the driver was gone." The others weren't convinced, but they didn't argue. Eventually, a tow truck was requested. The sedan was loaded and removed as abandoned property. As it disappeared down the road, Harlow felt a strange finality settle in his chest. The highway felt different afterward, quieter, lighter. Harlow didn't sleep when he got home. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw her face shifting, dissolving, fading into nothing. By morning, he knew what he had to do. He requested a personal day. Using public records, he searched for the name she had given him. It took hours, but eventually an address surfaced. Ridgway County, just under 2 hours away. That afternoon, Harlow stood on the porch of a modest single-story home, rehearsing words that refused to come together. How did you explain something like this? How did you tell someone their sibling, gone for over 20 years, had spoken again? The door opened. A man in his early 50s stood there, confusion flickering across his face. "Yes," he asked. Harlow introduced himself, showed his badge, and asked if he was Thomas Elmsley. The man's expression changed instantly. "Is this about my sister?" he asked quietly. Harlow nodded. Thomas stepped aside without another word and invited him in. They sat at the kitchen table. Harlow told him everything. He expected disbelief, anger, laughter. Instead, Thomas listened in silence, his hands clasped tightly together. When Harlow finished, the man stood and walked to a nearby cabinet. He pulled out an old photo album and opened it. The woman inside was unmistakable. "She always hated that stretch of road," Thomas said softly. "Said it felt wrong." Harlow delivered the message. Thomas's shoulders sagged as tears filled his eyes. "She can rest now," he whispered. Thomas remained seated long after Harlow finished speaking, staring down at the open photo album as if the images might move if he waited long enough. When he finally looked up, his eyes were red but steady. "I always thought she was stuck," he said quietly. "I could never explain why." He stood and crossed the room, returning with a folded newspaper sealed inside a plastic sleeve. The paper crackled as he laid it out on the table between them. "It's the accident report," Thomas said. "I've kept it all these years." Harlow leaned forward. The headline, dated February 2004, detailed a late-night collision on Interstate 61. A delivery truck had crossed the median and struck a sedan head-on. The driver of the sedan, Margaret Ann Elmsley, was pronounced dead at the scene. Harlow's eyes moved to a highlighted paragraph near the bottom. The truck driver had given a statement. He claimed he swerved to avoid something in the roadway, something he could not clearly identify. Harlow felt his throat tighten. "He said it just appeared," Thomas continued, "something pale, standing where no one should have been." They sat in silence, the implication hanging heavy in the air. Before leaving, Harlow assured Thomas again that his sister's message had been delivered, that she was ready to let go. Thomas thanked him, gripping his hand longer than necessary, as if afraid the moment would vanish. That evening, Harlow returned to the station and filed his report. Routine traffic stop, abandoned vehicle recovered, no driver located. Nothing more. Weeks passed. Harlow resumed patrols along Interstate 61, his eyes scanning the shoulder every night. The sedan never returned. The drifting headlights never appeared again. The road felt calmer, emptier. One night, months later, Harlow pulled over near mile marker 188 and stepped out of his cruiser. The air was still, but not cold in the same way. Whatever had lingered there was gone. He thought about how many names were etched into reports and databases, reduced to numbers, dates, and final locations. How many stories ended without closure. He understood something now. Justice wasn't always about citations or arrests. Sometimes it was about listening, about acknowledging that a life had existed and mattered long after the paperwork said otherwise. Harlow got back into his cruiser and drove on, leaving the quiet stretch of road behind him. Unwatched, unburdened. Years later, Trooper Daniel Harlow would still think about that night whenever winter settled over the highway. Whenever frost crept across the asphalt and traffic thinned to a lonely stream of headlights cutting through darkness, his mind returned to mile marker 188. Nothing like it ever happened again. No drifting sedan. No pale figure behind the wheel. No impossible records flashing across his screen. And yet, the memory never faded. Harlow kept the copy of the accident report locked away at home, folded neatly inside a plain envelope. Not because he needed proof. He had long accepted that some truths don't require validation, but because it reminded him that reality wasn't always confined to what could be measured or explained. Thomas Elmsley sent a letter months later. He wrote that after Harlow's visit, he finally slept through the night for the first time in over 20 years, that the weight he hadn't known how to name was gone. He thanked Harlow again for listening when no one else ever had. Harlow never replied. He didn't know what to say. On patrol, he became more attentive, more patient. He noticed the small things, hesitation in a driver's voice, fear hidden beneath irritation, exhaustion mistaken for guilt. He stopped seeing people as entries in a system and started seeing them as stories still unfolding. Sometimes, late at night, he would pull over and stand beside his cruiser, watching the road stretch endlessly ahead. He wondered how many others might still linger somewhere out there, caught between moments, waiting not for rescue but recognition. Waiting to be seen. The world teaches us to move on quickly, to file reports, to close cases, to mark things resolved. But some endings don't come with signatures or stamps. Some require a witness. That night taught Harlow that justice doesn't always arrive with sirens or courtroom verdicts. Sometimes justice is quieter. Sometimes it's simply listening when the past finally finds a voice. So the next time you drive a familiar road late at night, consider this. How many stories have unfolded on that pavement before you arrived? How many lives passed through that space, leaving behind echoes no one bothered to hear? And if something made you stop, if something asked you to look twice, would you? Because maybe some souls don't linger out of anger or fear. Maybe they stay because no one ever acknowledged that they were there at all. Drive carefully. You never know who might still be waiting by the roadside. If this story made you pause, question, or look at the road a little differently, let us know what you think really happened that night. Do you believe some souls remain tied to the place where their lives ended, or was there another explanation? Drop your thoughts in the comments. And if you want more stories like this, stories that blur the line between reality and the unexplained, subscribe and stay with us.